Good day, ladies and gentlemen, especially to you, attorney. This is the recorded discussion of Group 7 in our subject, Forensic 5, Lie Detection Techniques. And our topic for this reporting is all about evaluation of polygraph test result. This is the sequence of presentation, the topic learning objectives, and followed by the introduction.
Good day everyone, my name is Michael Cedric Montesino and we are Group 7 and our topic is all about evaluation of polygraph tests. The basic measurement of an effective polygraph evaluation and analysis of result comes from the factors affecting the instrument used, level of training and skills of the subject, condition of the examination room, and the actual examination process. The following discussion are important in the evaluation of polygraph examination result. What are the rules to be followed in the formulation? A. 1. Question must be simple and direct. Dapat simple ra, dayon dili kay taas ang pangutana. Then diretso sa unsa imong topic. They must not involve legal terminology such as rape, murder, etc. Kay if mo gamit ka na term kay basin dili nila masabtan like rape, murder, thief. Then 3. They must be answerable by yes or no. Dapat yes or no ra ang ilang answer. Wala na ilain. Must be short as possible, like ang giingon na. 5th, their meaning must be clear and unmistakable phrase in a language that the subject can easily understand. Dapat kung unsa ilang gigamit na language mo po ikuan sa examiner igamit. Kung Bisaya, dapat magbinisaya. If 6. They must not be in the form of accusation. Dapat dili mo akusahan ang dili pang akusa imong pangutana. 7. All question must refer to one offense only. 8. All questions must refer to only one element of an offense. And last, they must not contain interference to one's religion, races, or belief. Then, what are the types of test questions and how they are constructed? The polygraph test consists of asking the subject person through a list of prepared questions in a planned sequence comprising of not more than 12, at least 3 test charts are taken, each lasting not more than 4 minutes with a rest interval of 5 to 10 minutes between charts. There are 2 general types of questions to be constructed and may be supplemented by other types of questions. First is general question test, and second is peak of tension test. There are also 5 sets of tests that may be applied during the polygraph examination process. Test 1, general question test. The purpose is to get the standard tracing of the subject and to establish a true telling pattern for the initial part of the record. Test 2, number test. Psychological test. The purpose is to check the possible deliberate distortion when the chosen number is asked and to obtain a chart wherein the subject is under stress. Test 3, spot responder. The purpose is to determine the responsiveness of the subject crucial questions on spot responses. Test 4, mixed questions. The purpose is to compare the degree of reaction between control and relevant question. Test 5. Silence answer test. SAT. It is a confirmatory test. That's all. Thank you.
Good day, sir. This is Cadet Second Class Orasyon. I am the next reporter, and here's my assigned topic. How does the General Question Test GQT formulated? The GQT consists of a series of relevant and irrelevant questions asked in a planned order. Questions are so arranged as to make a comparison of responses to irrelevant questions with the subject's norm made during the answering of irrelevant questions. The relevant questions. Fictionally, relevant questions are questions directly related to the offense under investigation. In pre-employment and periodic screening, the area of interest may be the subject's entire background. Thus, there may be a series of relevant questions such as, have you ever been fired from a job? Or, have you stolen more than 50 pesos in 1 year from any of your employers? Relevant questions are further classified according to its stimulation effect when applied, namely, strong relevant or primary relevant question, which has an intense relationship to the crime or problem being considered. This is intended to produce strong emotional response in guilty subjects. Example, did you steal Nick's iPod? Secondary or weak relevant are questions that concern with elements of the crime and deals mostly on the guilty knowledge and partial involvement. Example, between 10 to 12 a.m., 10th of February 2011, did you open the table drawer of Mr. De La Cruz? Further, the weak relevant is classified into the following: sacrifice relevant or DIAT questions. Do you intend to answer truthfully? Designed to observe the response generally generated by the introduction of the first relevant questions in the series. Reaction to these questions gives examiner a clue as to the subject's attitude, willingness, or voluntariness to submit the test. Example, regarding the stolen iPod, did you intend truthfully or answer each question about that? Knowledge questions. This type of questions is propounded to the subject to detect information about a crime that only guilty subject would have. Such information might include details about the site of the crime or means of committing it, such as a type of weapon used. It is hypnotized that guilty subjects will exhibit a different psychological response and to the core. Relevant detail than to incorrect details, but that innocent subject will respond the same to all items. Example, did you know for sure who stole the iPad of Nick? At this instance, The phrase "for sure" is included to eliminate further suspicion, just in case the subject knew the offender and the location of the evidence but is only hesitant to answer yes. And that's all is my topic. Further will be discussed by the next reporter. Thank you.
So, good day. My name is Mario Binvaro and I'll be explaining about the evidence connecting question. So, evidence connecting question, this has to do with inviting subject's attention on the probability of incriminating proof that would tend to establish his guilt by linking him and his predicaments to the fingerprints, footprints, tool marks, etc. and collected at the crime scene. So, example, where the footprints outside the house of Nick yours. So in the evidence connecting question, this refers to the subject which the police officer or the examiner trying to test the subject's fingerprints and footprints. So they'll be asking some questions related to the crime scene. The crime scene. There there are evidence collected and they are going to relate those evidence to the subject's doing. So next will be the control question. So control questions are used for purposes of comparison. Essentially, truthful subjects are believed by polygraph examiners to be more concerned and thus more psychological, psychologically aroused about control than relevant question. The responses to both control and relevant questions are compared. So the control questions, there are limited questions given in control questions. In this statement, it is said that truthful subjects are believed by polygraph examiners to be more concerned. So there are questions that is not yet related to the questions given. So the responses to both control and relevant questions are compared. So they are going to compare the documents and in the crime scene collecting evidence, and they're going to show some relevant questions also that is part of their investigation. So control questions have two kinds. So first, primary control question. So in primary control question, recall the offense done from the time of childhood up to 3 to 5 years before the occurrence of the present offense being investigated. So in primary control questions, recall of the offense done the time. So in their primary control questions, it is not necessarily that they're going to push a question that is so serious about the investigation. They're going to find out about the first. They're going to do some first move, and then they're going to do some follow-up questions about the investigation. So there, after 3 to 5 years before the occurrence, so it is said in the primary control questions that from 3 to 5 years they are going to do some offense of the investigation. Example, before reaching the age 28, have you ever stolen anything? So there, that is the simple questions given in the statement about the primary control questions. So just a simple question given by the primary control questions, and it is not too harsh and not so hard to be answered. Then, next, secondary control questions. More specific in nature, it is based upon another sort of wrongdoing, which will enhance the subject's opportunity for responsiveness. Its scope includes up to present period of examination. Example, have you ever stolen anything from this locality? So, it is said in the secondary questions that it is related to the wrongdoing of the subject. So they're going to the examiner trying to questions the subject about the what he she do that time in the place, or have he or she stole some property, and etc. So the formulation of both types of control questions necessitates reasonable certainty that the subject's answer is a lie. It is theorized that although guilty subjects will also be concerned about those exhibit more psychological reactions to relevant questions. So um, in this given statement, it is said that uh, they are predicting that some questions are uh, truth and the subject's answer is a lie, because they are doing some psychological already. So it is they're expecting some answers of the subjects that is not truth, and they're going to psycho the subject. So it is said that subjects will also concern about this exhibit for psychological reaction. So when you remember about the person who is sweating, then who is so nervous. So it is said here that those reactions can be called as a lie. So that would be all, and so we're going to proceed to the other reporter. Thank you.
Good morning, Attorney Season. This is my topic all about the 11 sample of set of general question test, the peak obtainment test, and the check question and fishing expedition test. Number one of those sample of set of general question test. Have you ever been called by the name Pedro? A relevant question. It's today Monday? A relevant question. Do you have anything to do with the robbery at SM Showmart last night? Weak relevant question. Are you over 20 years of age? A relevant question. Number 4. Were you one of those who robbed the SM last night? Strong relevant question. Number 6. Have you been involved in a robbery case this year? Control question relevant. Number 7. Do you drink water? A relevant question. Number 8. Was the pair of gloves found in a SM at yours? Evidence connecting relevant. Number 9. Do you know anyone involved in a robbery at SM last night? Knowledge question relevant. Number 10. Have you ever been involved in any robbery in your entire life? Secondary control relevant. Number 11. Have you deliberately lied to any question I have asked you? Relevant check. Question optional. Next topic is check question test and fishing expedition test question. What are the other questions that may ask in a polygraph technique? Number 1 is check question test. Check question test. It is direct question that relate the fact that the subject has told the truth to all questions as in a lie test. Second, the fishing expedition test question. The fishing expedition test question, it used to vagrant or looters for routine interrogation. No idea about what offense has been committed. For example, have you been arrested before? Or are you wanted anywhere now by the police? Next topic. The peak of tension test. The peak of tension test is similar in a format to conceal information test, but it is distinct because the questions are asked and easily recognized. A guilty examinee is expected to show a pattern of responsiveness that increases as correct alternativeness approaches and question sequence and decreases when it has passed. Stimulation tests often have this format. In a known solution, peak of tension test, the examiner knows which alternative is one truly connected to the incident and evaluates the examinee patterns of responses for evidence of the involvement in the incident. It is also possible to use the peak of tension test in searching mode when the examiner does not know which answer is connected to the event but want to use the test for help in investigation. It is assumed that a pattern of a guilty person automatic responses will reveal the correct answer. Next, reporter.
Good day, sir. I'm Cadet Second Class Punteros and this is my sign topic. Peak of tension test. And there are here some example of peak of tension test. A. Do you know whether the stolen watch from Rommel is a Rolex? This is an introductory phrase plus padding question. B. Is it an Omega? Padding. C. It is a Seiko? Padding. D. It is a Timex? Relevant question. E. It is a Alba Quest? Padding. F. It is a Citizen? Padding. And here, and my son is Guild Complex Test or GCT. Guild Complex Test. This test is applied when the response to relevant and control question are similar in degree and in consistency and in a way that the examiner cannot determine whether the subject is telling the truth or not. The subject is asked question aside from the relevant and control question. A new series of relevant questions dealing with a real incident and that which the subject could not have committed. If the subject does not respond to added relevant question, it indicates that the subject was being deceptive as to the primary issue under investigation. However, no conclusion can be drawn if the respondents to added guilt complex is similar to real issue questions. Example of guilt complex test. Did you steal that Ferrari toy collection? In this case, the stealing of Ferrari toy collection was not actually committed because the alleged crime was investigated was the loss of iPad. So, the question in guilt complex text is not relevant to the crime committed. That's the guilt complex test, not relevant to the crime or the loss of or the crime of the person. And next, symptomatic question. Symptomatic question, its function is to detect and evaluate the presence of outside issue which may suppress response to relevant questions. This often true that the subject is to fear they might be asked about another cases in which they are involved but are not the subject matter under investigation. And there are here the example of symptomatic question. Are you completely convinced that I will not ask any question on this test have not already reviewed? That's the example of symptomatic question. And next is KY question. S stand for suspect. K means knowledge. Is Y and Y refers to you as the subject. These three questions are based on Baxter technique, grouped together to confirm the previous chart and may detect indirect involvement of guilt knowledge. This is KY question is basis to Baxter technique. And here are some examples. S. Do you suspect anyone in particular of stealing Nick iPad? And here's some example of key. Do you know for sure who stole Nick iPad? Means key means knowledge, and why refers to you as the subject. And here the example of why. Did you steal Nick iPad? That's the example of SKY. And S stands for suspect. K means knowledge. Y refers to you as a subject. And that's all. That's all for my explanation for my topic. Next.
Good day, attorney. My topic is all about silent answer test and zone comparison test. Silent answer test. This test is conducted in the same manner as when relevant and control questions are asked, but the subject is instructed to answer the questions silently to himself without making any verbal response causes distortion in a tracing such as sniff or clearing the throat. So the silent answer test, it is the subject is instructed by the examiner to refrain during the test from giving an audible answer to the questions that are to be asked of him. Next is zone comparison test. It is a polygraph technique developed by Clive Baxter in 1960 that encompasses three zones, which is black, red, and green. So red and green, it is are compared and quantified for a determination of truth or deception. Zone, a 20 to 35 seconds block of polygraph chart time initiated by a question having a unique psychological focusing appeal to a predictable group of examines. So a zone is predictable group of examines every vertical lines. The polygraph chart, it consists of 5 seconds. So there are 5 variations of zone comparison test. One is math quadritrack zone comparison technique. Is a polygraph technique used exclusively for single issue test. It was developed by Matt after 2 years of research and experimentations with fictitious crime tests used in conjunction with actual tests in real life situations. So it was developed by Matt, and it is the polygraph technique used for single issue, and also this test employed the Baxter basic test for structure and the quantification system with the summary refinement and the addition. So number two is three-zone comparison technique permits the use of inside track, fair or error, control question, and the hope of error, where the Baxter zone comparison technique does not incorporate to fair and hope of error questions. The only difference remaining in the test structure between numbers 1 and 2 techniques is the possession of symptomatic questions and which are opposite. So the color coding according to Baxter are green zone, which is for the control questions, and red zone for the relevant questions, and last black zone for the symptomatic questions. And number three is the Department of Defense Polygraph Institute BI spot zone comparison technique. The first zone contains the relevant questions concerning primary, secondary, and sky or suspect knowledge you questions. The second zone is used when there is only one question or issue that must be addressed in the examination, and the fourth is integrated zone comparison technique developed in 1987 by Nathan J. Gordon, William M. Wade, and Philip M. Cucchetti. This technique has the most significant departure from the original zone comparison technique developed by Clive Baxter. So the last is Utah zone comparison technique. The structure of this technique is basically the same for single issue test as it is for multiple issue test. However, instead of using relevant questions that embrace several facts of a crime or matter under investigation, the single issue test uses relevant questions that address a single issue only. So, after all the five tests, seven administered by the polygraph examiner was not able to make a different diagnosis, and arrangement was be made for re-examination of this subject at later day. So that's all.
Note, after all the five tests have been administered and the polygraph examiner was not able to make a definite diagnosis, an arrangement should be made for a re-examination of the subject that at a later date during the discussion where examiner finalizes the arrangement for re-examination. It would be helpful to observe the subject comments and general behavior ordinarily different from those of a subject who is determined to be lying. Experience shown that persons who are truthful would comply and adhere to the rescheduled examination even if not under the custody of the police. On the other hand, untruthful subjects are prone to break the promise of arrangement to come back for re-examination. So it means the polygraph examiner receives and examines the case facts, and the specific test questions are developed by the examiners based on the facts of the case and examines version of events. So the question is, what are the most common used question sequencing? So the most common techniques in sequencing questions are the revised rate, inbow, relevant, and test, and the Baxter zone comparison test. So let's go first the red and bow techniques. So the red and bow techniques has 11 questions. So first, irrelevant. Have you ever been called by the name Pedro? So by the way, irrelevant is so irrelevant. So what is irrelevant? These questions include asking whether the examinees perpetrated the target act or knows who did it. Perhaps questions about particular pieces of evidence that would incriminate the guilty person. So, so the example is have you ever been called the name Pedro? We have number 2. So the same relevant question. Do you drink? And the next is weak relevant. So what is weak relevant? So these are the questions that concern with elements of the crime and deals mostly on a guilty knowledge and partial involvement. So example of that is, were you in the vicinity of Nick de la Cruz house between 10 and 11 last night? So that's the example of weak relevance. So relevant again, number 4. Are you sitting down? Oh, let's proceed to number 5, which is strong relevant. So relevant is a relevant question is one that deals with the real issue of concern of the investigation. So example of strong relevant: did you steal the iPad of Nick? And the next one is primary control. So what is primary control questions? It says recalls the offense done from the time and childhood up 3 to 5 years before the occurrence of the present offensive being investigated. So example of that is before reaching at the age of 28. Have you ever stolen anything? So that's the example of primary control. So number 7 is relevant question again. Do you drink juice? Do you think orange juice rather? So number 8 is evidence connecting. So what is evidence connecting? An evidence connecting question is designed to determine if the examinee was involved with any evidence of the crime or is aware of the nature, location of various items of evidence. So the example of that is where the footprints outside the house of Nick is yours. So that's the example. Number 9 is knowledge. So what is knowledge? Is the psychophysiological questioning technique that can be used on a part of the polygraph examination, which purpose to assess whether the suspect concealed guilty knowledge by measuring their physiological responses while responding a series period of examination. So that is the knowledge. Secondary control. Secondary control. So example is that is have you ever stolen anything from this locality? And the last but not the least, symptomatic. So what is symptomatic? So symptomatic is the questions within a polygraph format used to identify the presence or absence of the super dampening. So example of that is, have you ever lied answering any of my question now? So that is the read and bow technique. So there are 11 questions. So let's proceed to the Baxter zone test, which have a 13, 13 questionable or 13 questions. So the next is the Baxter zone test. So there are 13 questionable questions. So this is something different from the raid and inbound technique. These questions will be formulated and the test so constructed in sequence as follows. So first is relevant. Have you ever called by the name Pedro? Number 2, sacrifice relevant. So what is a sacrifice relevant? So sacrifice relevant is it is commonly introduced into a question list and an effort reduced to the possibility an error that is said to result from the. So the next is symptomatic. Are you completely convinced that I will ask you any questions of this test that has already been reviewed? So number 4, control. Can you remember stealing anything before you were 28 years old? Or you were 28 years of age? Number 5, strong relevant. Did you steal Nick's iPad? Number 6, control. Other than what you told me, did you steal any things from your locality? Strong relevant. Number 7, did you steal the cell phone of Nick's house? Number 8, symptomatic. Is there something else? Is there something else you are afraid? I will ask you, though I told you would not. So number 9, guilt complex. Did you steal the Ferrari toy collection? Number 10, weak relevant. Do you know where the missing iPad Nick is now? So number 11 is, do you suspect anyone in particular stealing Nick's iPad? Number 12, K. Do you know for sure who stole Nick's iPad? Number 13, last is Y. So, did you steal Nick's iPad?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. My name is Chief Ramos, and this is my report. Specific tests and specific techniques are very important in polygraph test because it shows the honesty and fasten the investigation and shows who truly the guilty is. So the question: are there any specific tests, specific techniques, or scenario in polygraph technique? So there are 4 answers, and number 1, known solution peak of tension. This is administered when a fact relating to the event is known only to the perpetrator of the event of the victim, the client, and the police or the subject. This material fact, whether at a particular sum of money, particular weapon, etc., is inserted into test comparison a list of similar items. The examinee is tested to determine his guilty knowledge. So in this test, the examiner knows which alternative is truly connected to the incident and evaluates the examinee's pattern of responses, his reaction, for evidence of involvement in the incident. Number 2, proving peak of tension. This is administered to obtain information that might, or personal information that might prove valuable to an investigation. Designed to determine the location, disposition, modus operandi, and amount of the least possibilities. So in this test, questions are based in an easily organized order. A guilty examinee expected to show patterns of responsiveness that increase as the correct alternative approaches in the questions, and decreases when it has shows dishonesty or past. Number 3, pre-employment test. These tests seek to verify information contained in a job application and develop relevant information deliberately committed by the subject. In this test, by doing the pre-employment test, questions should be focused on personal informations, or I should be focused, or that are answered some personal information that the examiner rather needs to know. So number 4, periodic testing. This is conducted for the purpose of determining the honesty of the employees assigned to sensitive position. It also acts as a constant deterrent to employees' dishonesty. So in this test, we will see the honesty and dishonesty of the examinee, the employees or the subject, and it will really shows the honesty of the examinee because it's conducted for the purpose of honesty of the person. That's all. Thank you.
And that's the conclusion. Thank you and God bless.